He brought Karoline Leavitt onto his show to challenge her. What he didn't foresee was being the one to leave the set, stunned and silent while she maintained her composure without raising her voice. Karoline Leavitt had participated in numerous interviews, some cordial and others less so. However, when her team informed her that the Everett Lane Show had extended an invitation, she arched an eyebrow. "Are you certain this isn't a trap?" she asked, only half joking. Everett Lane was notorious for dominating conversations, particularly with conservative guests. His show, filmed in a polished downtown Philadelphia studio, had turned into a staple for millions of progressives every Monday night. For others, it was merely background noise, loud, sarcastic, and unpredictable. Yet Karoline was no novice. She honed her skills taking on combative hosts in college town panels and early morning cable segments. The more hostile the environment, the sharper her focus became. Her communications director, Lyle, leaned against the wall with his arms folded. "You've got nothing to prove," he said. "However, if you arrive ready, he will lure you in. He will interject. Don't take it personally. Just maintain your flow." Karoline didn't reply immediately. She fixed her gaze on the screen displaying Everett's latest episode, where he ridiculed a guest for stumbling over a response about school choice. "I'll handle it." She finally spoke, "But I'm not taking a back seat." Lyle blinked, understanding the implication. Karoline declared, "I'm not stepping into that space just to be courteous while he dominates the conversation. If he craves a show, he'll have one, but it will unfold on my conditions." The week ahead rushed by with calls from producers, topic outlines, and last-minute schedule adjustments. The show's producer, a woman named Gwen, repeatedly returned to one subject: free speech on college campuses. "We'll begin with that." She mentioned that Everett is deeply passionate about it. Karoline wore a sly grin. "Indeed, I've come across passionate's succinct expression for it." The team arrived on a Wednesday morning in early March with remnants of snow scattered across the ground and a crisp chill in the air, hinting at the impending arrival of spring. Karoline remained quiet for most of the flight, headphones on, diligently jotting down notes and highlighting printouts. She was not practicing. She was strengthening her resolve. Arriving in Philly, the team headed directly to the hotel where Lyle presented her with the final rundown. They anticipate a serene discussion. He remarked that she didn't raise her gaze. Then they extended an invitation to the incorrect individual. Yet she felt no anger. That night, she was unmistakably direct. She FaceTimed her younger brother who had just returned from a campus protest in Austin. Some people still believe that raising their voices equates to victory. He mentioned that Karoline nodded, indicating they would learn. However, before the call concluded, her brother interjected, advising her not to let him rattle her and to focus on answering the question rather than the tone. That advice lingered in her mind. The following morning, she rose early and strolled to a serene cafe close to Rittenhouse Square. She enjoyed observing the hustle and bustle of city life. She felt a sense of uncertainty, particularly in areas that defied simple classifications. At the next table, a young man immersed in the pages of The Atlantic sipped his coffee, headphones in place. A woman in scrubs stood at the counter, ordering breakfast, her weary smile directed at construction workers who were playfully bantering about traffic. In this moment, no one seemed to notice her, and that brought her a sense of comfort. Back at the hotel, she received a text: "We're set. Studio car coming at 3:15. You'll be live at 5. Everett might say hi beforehand, that last part might say hi." I told her all she needed to know. He wasn't planning on it. Karoline felt at ease in her room. She dressed with intention, striking a balance between understated elegance and professionalism, a navy blazer paired with a cream top, her makeup fresh and clean, accented by a silver pin that belonged to her grandmother. As she glanced in the mirror, she took a deep breath and switched off the light. Yet, as the car approached the studio, she remained unaware of the unexpected twists that awaited her. The building loomed larger than she had anticipated, its glass panels stretching from the street to the sky, mirroring the overcast clouds above. The studio occupied the 12th floor, hidden behind a lobby that carried a subtle scent of espresso and sanitizer. The driver dropped Karoline and Lyle at the side entrance, where a production assistant was already on standby. "You're early," the assistant remarked, guiding them through security. "That's nice." "Everett seems to be in a mood," Karoline smiled slightly. "Is that different from how he usually is?" The assistant remained silent as the elevator ascended, the only sound being the sporadic ding of passing floors. Lyle shattered the stillness, suggesting a personal topic. Karoline acknowledged him with a brief nod, her gaze fixed on the ascending floor numbers, nearing 12. However, she had no intention of mirroring his energy. Instead, she was determined to set the tone from the moment the doors parted. The first thing she noticed was the chill in the hallway. The floor gleamed with polished concrete while the walls displayed framed screenshots from previous interviews. She walked past a photo of Everett caught mid-yell at a former senator and another where he wore a smug expression, sipping from a mug that read, "Facts First." A woman in a headset approached them halfway down the hall. "You'll find yourself in the green room as Everett wraps up a call. It resembles a dentist's waiting area with white walls, armchairs, a tray of cold waters and energy bars, and a large monitor displaying the live feed from the studio." Everett's voice faintly echoed from the screen, asserting, "If you honestly think banning speakers helps students, you've already lost the plot." Karoline didn't take a seat immediately. She observed his expression on the screen, self-satisfied and quick with words, his tone teetering on the edge of sarcasm. She had encountered this type before. Individuals like him didn't engage in debates to achieve victory. They engaged in a lively debate. The door swung open behind her and a voice remarked, "Well, if it isn't the rebel from New Hampshire." Karoline turned to see Everett Lane, clad in a sharp black blazer and his signature white sneakers, wearing that smile that always seemed somewhat strained. "Wasn't sure you'd show," he added as he stepped into the room. Karoline reached out her hand. "What would stop me?" Everett shook it off, but not too tightly. "Individuals like you typically express themselves through tweets rather than presenting real arguments." Lyle moved behind her, yet Karoline remained unfazed. "I thought I'd provide your audience with a reason to stick around for the first segment." Everett raised his eyebrows, clearly impressed but also assessing her. "Be cautious, you might begin to sound self-assured." "I laughed once. Let's just maintain civility." "Go ahead, share your thoughts." I mentioned my thoughts and we all head home safely, but Karoline remained silent in response. She gazed at him for a moment before saying, "I hope you brought better arguments than you did last week. Otherwise, this conversation will be brief." There it was, a fleeting spark in his eyes. But then Everett shifted his attention to Gwen, who had quietly entered during their exchange. "We're all set and ready to go." She responded in real time at 12. "You'll be positioned opposite Karoline for the first segment on campus speech codes. In the second segment, we'll shift to discussing social media bans." Everett nodded, ensuring her microphone remained active. Gwen offered a tight smile, reminding everyone that all guest microphones should stay on. Everett winked and exited the room while Karoline turned to Gwen. "Is that typical for him?" In the moments leading up to the live broadcast, Karoline settled in, reviewing her notes one final time as the studio countdown flickered on the monitor. Her heart was steady, alert, and focused, though not entirely calm. She cast a quick look at the camera angles being tested, close-up, wide frame. There was no room for error. She sipped her water and glanced at Lyle Reddy, who responded with a brief nod. "You can do it." Her lips curved into a smile. He may not be as astute as he believes. Yet, as the stage lights illuminated the set and Everett settled into his seat opposite her, an unexpected shift in the power dynamic loomed. The studio lights were unforgiving, stark, and more intense than they appeared on screen. Karoline's chair was positioned just slightly away from Everett's, a clever tactic employed by producers to create visual tension. She adjusted her blazer, straightened her posture, and stole a glance at the monitor displaying the countdown. 5, 4, 3. A red light flickered on, signaling that cameras were live and microphones were active. Without hesitation, Everett dove right in, welcoming viewers back to the Everett Lane Show. "I'm Everett, and this evening, I'm accompanied by Karoline Leavitt, a former White House staffer, commentator, and a prominent figure in the so-called free speech movement." Karoline smiled but remained unresponsive to the tone as Everett carried on. "Let's dive straight in, Karoline. You've publicly stated that college campuses are unfriendly to independent thought. Are you implying that students shouldn't have the right to protest speakers they oppose?" Karoline inclined her body just a bit. "I'm proposing that silencing someone isn't a form of protest. It's merely a performance. When universities permit this behavior, they're not safeguarding their students. They're shielding noise." Everett let out a brief chuckle, suggesting that students are now denied the chance to voice their outrage. How ironic, coming from a political faction that gets easily riled by pronouns. In that moment, Karoline sensed a subtle shift in the room's energy. She refused to fall for it. An absurd penalty. She stated calmly, "Silencing is not the same as protesting. There's a distinction between the two. If your argument is strong, it should be able to stand on its own. There's no need to block the door." Everett reclined in his chair, extending a hand toward the camera as if he were elucidating the fundamentals to a less informed audience. Let's not pretend this is about safeguarding speech. You aim to elevate the voices you align with, while labeling it censorship when others dissent. Karoline interjected, not with loudness but with precision, and you don't seek to shield discussion. You aim to refine it. Your appreciation for free expression only extends to what aligns with your perspective. Everett leaned in intently. I'm not the one making decisions about what teachers can express in their classrooms, Karoline. Neither am I, she retorted. However, if we are going to discuss policy, let's address the issue of administrators canceling events due to the possibility of someone's feelings being hurt. That does not align with the principles of education. That's performance art. Everett's expression flickered with discomfort. Not panic, but a dawning realization. Karoline wasn't on the defensive. She was taking control. He attempted once more. You've crafted a career out of playing the victim. Oh no, the imposing university wouldn't allow my speaker to present. Meanwhile, you advocate for policies that limit genuine academic freedom. Karoline's tone remained steady, calm yet incisive. I've addressed schools where security had to escort students out, tears in their eyes, because their peers threatened them for attending. If that's the freedom you're championing, Everett, perhaps you should reassess your direction. The studio fell into a hushed silence. The sound of camera operators adjusting their positions mingled with the faint hum of the air system above. Lyle, peering from behind the set wall, remained motionless, his gaze unwavering. Everett offered a tight, rehearsed smile. So it's about feelings now? He asked. No, Karoline responded. It revolves around fear. And if you fail to notice the distinction, perhaps that's the reason you're still approaching this as if it were merely a game. The voice from the control room crackled in Everett's earpiece, signaling 2 minutes remaining in the segment. He adjusted his microphone, clearly striving to assert authority. Karoline, I'll ask you plainly. Are you suggesting that the left is methodically stifling free expression? Karoline inclined her head ever so slightly. I'm asserting that it's not a glitch. It's a strategy. Everett opened his mouth, but Karoline interjected. And the irony is that this isn't new. Every generation has individuals who feign resistance while operating within the institutions. You've merely rebranded it. For a moment, Everett was silent. He blinked, let out a forced laugh, then leaned forward as if preparing to shift the tone. All right, we've had a lively start after the break. Karoline interjected, still composed. Before we go, Everett, just one question. Do you ever allow your guests to finish a thought before you interpret it for them? Everett paused. I thought I did. Roll the tape back. She maintained her smile, but before the crew could transition to a commercial, Everett glanced at the control booth and understood that this episode was going to be anything but ordinary. He managed to return to the narrative. As soon as the red light flickered off and the segment transitioned to a commercial break, the room remained tense, holding its breath. No small talk, no sip of water. Everett didn't even glance at her. He fixed his gaze straight ahead, jaw clenched, tapping the edge of his note cards against the desk. Gwen's voice crackled through his earpiece. Back live in 90 seconds. Karoline remained still, her expression devoid of a smirk. She felt no anger. She was observing as Everett finally turned to her. You done hijacking my show? Karoline shrugged lightly. Have you finished attempting to dominate the dialogue? He remained silent to Gwen's voice for another 60 seconds. Maintain brevity. One of the technicians leaned in to adjust Karoline's microphone, yet she remained still. There was a palpable shift in the atmosphere. Control was slipping. Everett was unaccustomed to facing such direct challenges without the usual shouting or dramatic flair, and she hadn't even elevated her voice. After a brief moment, Everett glanced over, attempting to regain his composure. Look, he said softly, I'm not your adversary in this situation. Are you aware of that? Karoline's expression remained unchanged. You phrase it as if it absolves you of responsibility. He blinked, sat back, and let out a brief exhale through his nose. 10 seconds, Gwen said. Live again. Everett's voice shifted, becoming slightly less casual, a bit tighter. Welcome back to the Everett Lane Show. I'm here with Karoline Leavitt, who has expressed her strong belief that free speech is facing significant challenges. Let's take this discussion to the next level. Social media bans. Do you genuinely think that private companies are obligated to provide you with a platform? Karoline leaned in, her demeanor calm and assured, as if she were sharing insights drawn from real-life encounters rather than abstract concepts. When the digital town square dictates the flow of information that influences national elections and silences narratives without repercussions, we face a serious issue. Everett offered a smile, though it lacked genuine warmth. You mean like misinformation? Karoline nodded. Exactly. Misinformation, like that time an outlet reported something you said out of context, and you posted 5 videos to correct it. Should you have been suspended for that? Everett paused, noting the difference. That was my own content, yet the platform remained unaware. Karoline interrupted, stating they acted on their assumptions. That's the crux of the matter, when a select few companies assume the role of referees. There are no rules, only reactions. He attempted to change direction, but it was their enterprise, their decision. Karoline reclined, pondering the scenario where a bank might freeze an account due to disapproval of one's views. Everett chuckled, though the sound was tinged with anxiety. Let's go. That's a stretch. No, she replied, her voice low and cutting. It was a moment of uncertainty, and she allowed it to linger. For a brief instant, Everett was at a loss. He turned his card, met the camera's gaze, and almost instinctively cast a glance toward the control room. Is the clip prepared? He inquired, and Gwen's voice crackled in response. You never requested one. That shook him up. He blinked and glanced back at Karoline. All right, what's the solution? Let everyone express their thoughts freely. Karoline smiled faintly. The answer lies in accountability, not to corporations but to one another. If someone is dishonest, challenge them, engage in debate, and triumph in the realm of ideas, but don't close off the arena. Everett shifted in his chair, his knee beginning to bounce under the table. Karoline pressed on, now with a hint of intensity. You speak of safeguarding democracy, yet you support systems that penalize dissent. That's not safeguarding anything. That's dictating results. He attempted to dismiss her with a gesture. You've made your point. No, Everett, she said, her voice calm yet unwavering. I haven't. That froze him,